Ravnica is often spoken of in these grand, broad strokes, but when it comes down to it, Ravnica has always been a plane of mystery. It's a place that is pulled in 10 different directions at all times, and it can only choose one direction at a time to go in. To begin, the plane has always been a city of some kind, a sprawling ecumenopolis that was once headed by a group of elves known as the Erstwhile, and when they died out, Ravnica was left without a ruling body. So, to no one's surprise, the plane became a place of violence and brutality until 10 individuals came together as the sensible ones and came to an agreement. If the destruction continued, there would be no more city. So they formed 10 factions, and Azor I suggested a living magical document to ensure the future of the city. The 9 others agreed, some not initially but were convinced. These individuals were, in addition to Azor, Archangel Razia, Demon Lord Rakdos, God Zombie Sfogthir, Cesarum, the Lord of Chaos, the Ghost Council of the Obsidat, Niv Mizzet the Firemind, a group of dryads who formed the entity known as Matslesnia, and a Vidalcan with the surname of Simic, were all the original signatories that formed the first guild pact, who would go on to form the Guilds of Ravnica. Each faction was ordered to do a job, like the Izzet's task of maintaining the civic works of the city, or the Gruul functioning as park rangers. It was one guild that wasn't even mentioned as part of the prior signatories that was meant to undermine the guild pact at every turn to prove its function necessary. Sazdek's House Demir was intended to be a secret. The city carried on like this perfectly fine for 10,000 years, until Sazdek was arrested for attempting to break the guild pact, but in a surprise twist, his arrest broke the guild pact anyway. In the aftermath, a new non-magical guild pact was created, but since the magic itself was a binding force for the whole city, everything kinda just fell apart, and the guild were disbanded. The guildless, the other half of the city's population, would reclaim guild territory, and while it was short-lived, it is a period of time the parents would rather forget about. Eventually, the 10 would try to reconstitute themselves, and most did in some form successfully, some under new leadership, others holding strong to their traditions. But without a strong magical guild pact, they were doomed to fail again. So, a good 75 years after the guild pact was broken, Niv Mizzet discovered Azor's contingency plan for just in case this exact scenario came out: the implicit maze. The maze ran through the entirety of the city and would be a test of guild cooperation. But these are the guilds we're talking about, and each one sent a maze runner with the explicit task of gaining the power of the maze for their guild. The maze was meant to take the magic of the guild pact and imbue it into one person, whoever solved the maze, and that person would be none other than Jace Beleren, who became the first living guild pact. But as Jace was a planeswalker and a Gatewatch member, he really didn't have time to oversee the pact, so the guilds fell back on their old habits, and by old habits I do mean fighting over small pieces of territory, with 7 guilds in particular falling under the influence of Nicol Bolas. This was enough for Niv Mizzet to tell the truth of the existence of other planes and walkers, and called a guild summit to broach the idea of cooperation, which to no one's surprise was roundly refused, and Niv would throw his hat in the ring to become the new living guild pact. And with one guild representative found dead the next morning, the idea was stuffed. Which brings us to the War of the Spark, which, yes, Ravnica won, but at significant cost and losses. A majority of the 10th district was destroyed, guild halls ruined, leaderships mangled, but Ravnica did manage to eke out, not just thanks to the efforts of the Gatewatch. The guilds managed to work together to elect and resurrect Niv Mizzet as the new living guild pact. This idea of cooperation would not just be a one-off either, as 2 years later, the new Phyrexian invasion occurred, and while yes, each guild played its own part in the plane's defense, we saw no end to the profiteering that came out of the situation, with the Golgari completed and the Dimir seemingly gone. Niv saw a huge boost in power, but an even larger amount of distrust as a result. That brings us to recent events with the murders at Karlov Manor, and unsurprisingly, leadership amongst the guilds is forever doomed to press the line between distrust and cooperation based on a simple red versus blue mentality. Frankly, with the Omen path set to make the plane a beacon for free trade, the future, as always, looks uncertain. But if there's one plane that is always ready to set aside their differences in the name of coexistence, it's Ravnica.
Thank you so much for watching, and may your revels never end.